That's a great question. Isn't a free market more or less gambling? What about that wholesaler I just described, this fellow who is deemed a speculator, and he buys the farmer's crops before they're even planted? Isn't that gambling? We're going to study that in greater depth. Gambling, however, is different. Gambling is the creation of risk that wasn't necessary and didn't exist before. You roll the dice, you put money in the line, you roll the dice, you're creating risk, first of all, that was unnecessary. Second of all, that risk didn't exist beforehand. You created that risk for yourself. Speculation's a lot different. The man that buys the crops of the farmer is lifting from the farmer the need to market. And when we deal with entrepreneurship, you're going to understand why marketing is such a very, very important key to entrepreneurship and building your business. Most farmers don't know how to market. That burden is lifted from them by the fellow that specializes, for example, in soy. That's all he does. He might have bought the soy crop this year and lost $100,000, but in the next year gains $450,000. So he averages out. 1 year was the expense and cost of doing business. He knows the soy crops though. So he lifts that burden as he takes the risk. And by doing so, he lifts the burden from the farmer. He bears the burden for the consumer, makes prices generally lower by assuming the risk himself, and lifts the burden from the economy, the risk from the economy to a large extent. So there's a lot involved with this issue of speculation versus gambling. Remember, gambling is when you create risk that was both unnecessary and didn't exist beforehand. You picked up dice. You played at cards. Wasn't necessary. Speculation is different. I believe it's a lousy term for a very valuable function of your economy. Quite frankly, if you didn't have those kinds of people who are buying, taking the risk, and who are masters of that area of soy or corn or whatever, we didn't have those, you wouldn't have had your cereal this morning.